Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei and I'm so excited to paint with you today. So today we're going to be tackling another page in our watercolor journals where we're going to do a mashup of a couple of different things sticking with the winter holiday theme. I'm going to be doing a half wreath with greenery and berries, and on the inside or the interior of that I'm going to add some dangling Christmas tree baubles or ornaments, and as well as a evergreen tree in the background. And I think it'll just be a fun little composition. So let's get started. So if you're new here, I am going to go over supplies really quickly, but you can find a link to all the supplies I mentioned here or links to them in the description of this video. This is a 6x9 watercolor journal. Balhong is the brand. 140-pound cold pressed paper is the weight and texture, and it's 100% cotton. I'm using my Core paints, QOR by Golden. These are this is a set of 24. They were originally tube paints that I put into the pans, and then I'm also using, I think I have 3 brushes here, a 4, a 6, and a 10 all round brushes. I have a pencil to get myself sketching and started, and I'm probably going to add some ink as well later on in the design. So you saw that I kind of drew out what I wanted to do here in terms of the design. I'm not going to draw all of this. A lot of these leaves I'm going to paint in but not draw in first. You can certainly draw yours completely on your watercolor paper, but I drew it on just a regular sheet of copy paper just to give myself some idea of what I wanted the composition to be. And now I'm going to try to mimic that in here, but doing mostly painting. And we'll of course add some ink later on, I think. Ink, maybe some bleed proof white and some other, I also have a gold pen, a silver pen. We'll see where the inspiration takes us. So for my circle, for my wreath, to get myself started as a guide, I love to use just rolls of tape. They make great circles to trace. So I'm just going to trace around this one lightly. It does not have to be perfect. This is just going to get me started. So I am going to take my eraser and just lightly erase kind of the top half. This bottom half I'm going to use a lot of paint over top of it, so I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to start with my greenery around the edges and the berries. So let's start with that. I'm just going to start with the leaves, and I think I'm going to use just a traditional sap green. So let's activate that. Let's throw some color or some water in there. Let me make sure you guys can all see everything. So whatever brand paints you use, if you don't have Core, that's perfectly fine. I just perhaps happen to prefer these or use these, and this is the brand I have, but if you have something else, great. All right, so pulling out some of my sap green. I love sap green in the Core line. It's my favorite. And sap greens are not all created equal, just FYI. So I'm making kind of 2 versions of it, a lighter version and a darker version. I'm going to start with my lighter. I'm using my size 10 brush, and I did draw out all the leaves on here, so I'm going to try to kind of follow this pattern because I really like the weight of the composition, but if I get off track a little bit, it's totally fine. I'm going to start on the tip of my brush. I'm going to press down, drag, and pull up at the same time, and that makes a perfectly lovely leaf shape. I'm going to do this in a couple places. I am going to skip a few spots where I've drawn some leaves kind of more in the foreground. And I'm going to make those a little darker in my next one. And you don't have to do every leaf in one shot. If you need to make a few different strokes, you can definitely do that. So here there's a darker leaf that kind of falls in front of this one. And again, try not to get too hung up on the details. What I do try to make sure I do is when I put that circle down, make sure I don't that I cross the line a little bit and that I don't worry too much about being perfectly on either one side or the other of it. I'm going to do a bunch down here. I'm definitely going to add some additional ones over top of these. Do one coming up in the middle there. I don't think I've ever done it this way before, where I'm really trying to follow a previous pattern that I drew, but do it while I'm just painting. And I will say my size 10 brush here, my tip on this brush has seen better days. So I'm struggling a little bit with that fine line at the base of these leaves. I'm gonna actually switch to my size 6. And I have other brushes I could swap in as well, but okay, so we're not completely full here. I do still have to add berries, and I'm also going to add in, now that these are dry, we're going to add in some darker leaves to create some more fullness. You know, I'm not loving this brush either. I'm going to pick up my silver black velvet brush for this, although I don't love doing leaves with this either, but you know. So you can see I'm going to fill in a few spots that overlap with the previous ones in this darker color. And I'm going to do a big clump of berries right there. Again, you can draw them in ahead of time if you need. To have that down beforehand for your composition, it's easier for you to draw it out before you start to paint. There we go. And you can even go back in. I didn't really save too much room over here for my berries, so they're going to have to be tucked behind a little bit. Okay, let's add some of these berries. I'm gonna rinse. Oh, this brush is really not wanting to rinse out completely. There we go, better. I'm going to put my silver black velvet away. I'm going to jump back into my size 6. I'm going to activate my Alizarin Crimson. This is definitely my red of choice for winter berries. And I'm going to do a nice big cluster here. Slightly different shapes and sizes, or slightly different sizes, not really different shapes, they're all round. And on some of them you can definitely leave like a little white highlight. Let's do another cluster over here. Like I said, I forgot to leave some space here, so we'll have to tuck one or two behind, semi behind like one of the leaves. And that's okay. So this is layer 1. I'm going to add some darker color or another layer on top of this to give these a little dimension and separation from each other within the cluster. And let's see, that feels a little unbalanced. Let's tuck one in down here. behind this leaf, and then I'm going to do like 2 in a cluster or like connected to each other up here above the branch. Lovely. And then the only thing is I'm feeling a little light over here in terms of like the fullness. 2 things I'm going to do. I'm going to add 1 or 2 more leaves. Over here, do 1 there, and I'm going to actually bring 1 out from here. Maybe a tiny little one there. Lovely. Okay. And then I'm also going to take a little bit of brown. To make brown, really simple. You can just use alizarin crimson and sap green mixed together. So the 2 colors we were already using makes a nice reddish brown. And I'm going to switch to my size 4 brush. This one is my newest one, so it still has the best tip on it. And I'm just going to come around this way. I'm going to kind of do like a braided wreath, like wooden overlapping, intertwined, but thin. I don't want to get too thick. And then you can bring some of that down into the rest of the wreath, into a few spots. And I'm definitely going to emphasize some of this. I'm already like, my brain is already excited to add ink and pen to this in other ways to emphasize some of these areas. So I'm already thinking about that. Okay, so there's the basis of our wreath. I'm going to come in. It's looking good, but a little flat. That's okay. We're going to come back in here and do some things to zhuzh that up. But let's put some of our baubles in here. And you can pick any colors that you want. I'm going to do, let's see, my tree is going to be green in here as well, because I'm going to do a tree. So I think I'm going to make them like a gold. I have a Quinacridone gold in here, which looks very orange, but... And I'm going to use a little cadmium yellow. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make... Actually, I'll do one that's going to be goldish. I'll do that one right up front here. So I'm going to put the yellow down first. I'll leave a little highlight in it. And then I'm going to pick up this Quinacridone gold. I'm just going to drop it in. I'm going to let wet on wet kind of do its thing, leaving a highlight in the center here. And a little bit more at the edges. All right, we're going to let that dry. And I think the other one, maybe I'll do red as well. So red and gold, and then we'll have our tree. So while we let that dry, I have to do another one, but it's going to be behind, and that's going to be the red one. And then we're going to do the tree last, because the tree is going to be tucked behind. So let's go back to these berries, and I'm going to take some of my alizarin crimson again. I'm going to get a nice saturated amount of that, and I'm going to go back to my size 4 brush. Switching brushes a lot today. I normally don't, or I feel like I don't. So right where some of these berries meet, so what I did there is I just pulled a bunch of paint out of my brush. I had too much paint and water in there. But right where these meet, I'm going to put a shadow. And along the edges, blending in. So here you can see you have a nice cluster that there's no like defined edges. So let's make this one on the bottom just darker than the rest. It's tucked behind. Blend out some of these other areas here. And again, I'm already thinking about how I'm going to add some wild and funky ink to this, I think. And you don't have to. We'll get to a point with the watercolor where you could just leave it as watercolor and it would be fine. All right, I'm going to add even a little more with a tiny bit of Payne's Gray. And just in a few of these spots, especially this one. There we go. It just gives them a little more pop, a little more contrast. Contrast is the name of the game when you're trying to really capture the eye and have something feel dynamic. There are times when people are going to be going for subtle and soft and delicate, but if you're looking at your piece and you're like, ugh, everything just looks like really the same or tired or like flat, it's because you don't have enough contrast. And contrast is just the distance between your lightest light and your darkest dark. And a lot of times people just need more darks, which means layers in watercolor. They've stopped at the midpoint and it's like, just go a couple of shades darker in a few areas, not everywhere. That's the hardest part. All right, so something else I think I'm going to do. So I've been talking a lot about adding ink. I am going to make some open leaves, I think in green, but this darker green, where I'm just going to draw with the tip of my brush these open center leaves. And again, to see how this darkness adds, and it's not a lot, I'm not painting a whole leaf, I'm leaving it open, but it adds contrast. And this isn't going to be the solution for everything, but this is fun. I like this. It's giving this a little bit of a crafty, illustrative feel. I can even just outline some of the ones that I already have. This one I'm going to end up painting in. And let's put something down here, just one or two. Stick with one maybe. There we go. Okay, let's move on to our other bauble. I think this one is finally dry enough. I'm going to go to a slightly bigger brush. Go with our Alizarin Crimson. I'm going to raise it up a little bit higher. And this one, you're going to come right to the edge. Your gold one. Just be careful when you're getting right to that edge, making sure that gold one is really dry. So if the gold one wasn't really dry, they would bleed into each other, which that could be okay too, as long as it's intentional. That's what you wanted to do. And then I am going to drop in some darker color, creating some lights and shadows and reflection. And I'm going to even pick up a little Payne's Gray with my Alizarin Crimson right along the edge to really give it that. So my brush is perfectly clean right now. I'm just using it as a tool to blend this together. There we go. All right, so 2 little baubles, and the strings I'm going to, I'm going to take some of this gold color. If there was a string, so I'm going to draw it in pencil. We'll do it in ink in a minute. So the strings are coming up from here. We are going to draw in the little caps. That go right up on top. And the string above, and then on these strings I'm going to add like little jewels or little beads maybe. I'm just going to do them all in gold. I'll definitely be adding some ink to those. And last but not least, I'm going to put a little tree in the background. I don't know why. I just thought this would look neat. Maybe it's going to be too much. I just added phthalo blue to my sap green, giving me this darker, kind of a different green feel. And I am going to go with my smaller brush. And just from the top right up here, I'm going to start to pull some of that color out. From the tip and just swiping down kind of diagonally, leaving some gaps. Definitely have some tree videos. This one's tricky because we're going up against these baubles and I have to like keep in mind a bunch of this is behind while I'm still kind of judging the width that I have to go. Make that a little darker, a little more full there. I'm basically keeping things symmetrical as I go, but without having both sides to look at. And we're going to bring this all the way down to behind these leaves, like all the way down to the base here. All right, it's feeling like a little much, but I'm going to forgive myself. Make some brown. I'm going to put that in between a few spots. Okay. Oops, sorry, kicking the camera there. Kind of see a trunk in between there. And let's finish up by adding a little bit more color to our ornaments. Again, creating, if you see that, creating that sorry, my brain just got hyper focused on concentrating, but creating that contrast. And let's go, of Quinacridone gold. You know, we can even add a little of this brown to it that we made and really do some shadows on here. Don't worry, I'm going to blend these out quite a bit. There we go. All right, let's let all of this dry and we'll bring it in our pen and add some more details and contrast to make this really pop. All right, I'm back and I am going to start adding some ink. So I'm just using an illustration pen, and I also have a Uniball gold pen here as well. So I'm going to start adding some of the black, and I am just going to start going over and adding extra lines to this little branch thing motif I had going on. And I'm actually going to add some ink to these open leaves that I painted. Just a little bit. We don't have to do everything everywhere. And you can add some that you didn't paint as well. All right, we're going to go into the berries, and I'm going to do some super sketchy round and round and round, giving the edges and even the inside a little bit this very sketchy, wonky and I'm going to do the same thing with my ornaments. Around the edges, the tops here. I'm actually going to almost color in. And of course our strings. And our little beads. All right, I'm going to take my gold pen. I'm going to add some of this to my red ornament. And also I'm going to color in with a little gold these tops here. Let's add in a few gold, just hand-drawn berries. So this is very much now a mixed media piece. I can add in some open leaves in my gold pen. And then I'm also going to add just some little gold baubles onto my tree. Again, this step is not absolutely necessary. I'm just having fun with it and filling it out, giving it some character. The only other thing that I could think I want is a few more really dark leaves like this. I know there's a lot going on here, but I am feeling like this is just flat in that section. So I'm going to take some really dark green and blue, phthalo blue and sap green, and my smallest brush, my size 4, and I'm going to put some very small detailed leaves in here. So if I do something like this, like a branch out here, I'm just going to put tiny little leaves off the side. Okay. I'm not trying to overpower it, but just add a few spots where the contrast is a little bit stronger in the wreath. You could even just put in some lines of greenery. You could add in here a little pine bough or pine needle branch in this much darker color. I'm just going to scooch over here and do like one off to the side. I'm like contorting my body to get over here. There we go. Just enough. All right. Again, lots going on here. It was fun. It was great to experiment with all these different shapes and textures and elements. Maybe a little too much. You tell me in the comments, but I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed painting it, and it's in my watercolor journal, so I learned a lot and now have a bunch of elements I can use in lots of different ways. So thanks for joining me. Don't forget to check out the description for links to supplies and materials that I use in this video, as well as like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so, and share with a friend who might also be joining you or like to join you on this watercolor journey. Thanks y'all, take care, and happy painting.